It's a common sense recap of the big stories. It's Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC.
Let's go now to our first guest. We got Andy McCarthy, former assistant U.S. attorney, joining us. Andy, we're not going to make you sing, but I do want to get to this big news, of course, about the release of the documents coming from the special counsel, Jack Smith. Conveniently, the judge releases all this damning information that they allege in the grand jury against President Trump. And here it is. It's weeks before the election. How is this not election interference?
Well, the whole exercise was election interference. So every aspect of it is going to be election interference. Interference in the sense of wanting to use the criminal justice process to influence the outcome of the election. The way these cases were indicted and scheduled for trial. Remember when Smith brought not one but two cases against Trump, he was hoping to get trials in March and June or July. That is to say, he had these 2.5 to 3 month trials, and the plan was to have Trump chained to a courtroom for all of the months in the run-up to the election. So, obviously this was done with the election calendar in mind. He got kind of spun up on his wheels on the immunity issue with the Supreme Court, so he wasn't able to get the trial he was hoping for in the J6 case. So this is the next best thing as far as he's concerned. He gets to put out all of his evidence into the public domain 31 days before the election.
How is it, though, even allowed by this judge? I mean, it's an extraordinary move, Andy, and you've been covering, obviously, legal issues a long time. To go out there and say anonymous, witness number 9A and 9-2 says this, as you know, grand juries are all one-sided. And clearly it's done to smear President Trump to bring back January 6th yet again. Surprise, surprise. Is this the October surprise?
Well, I don't know that it's an October surprise in the sense that it's less than they were hoping for, right? They were hoping the October surprise was going to be the jury was going to march in and convict him, right? That was what their objective was. But, I actually think that this was fairly clever on their part in that the Supreme Court directed Judge Chutkan go through Smith's case and figure out what conduct was immune, that is, what's the official acts of the presidency, and what conduct might be private. And she used that as a pretext to invite him to outline his case, and then she decided, well, this just has to be public. And ordinarily, in a criminal case, especially if the prosecutor's running around saying that the defendant is a threat to democracy, as we the last thing you would want to do is publicize your evidence prior to the trial and expose the witnesses and expose everything you'd have to expose. You'd want to keep that close to the vest. A judge normally would be worried about the defendant's fair trial rights and the possibility of prejudicing the jury pool. So there's a ton of reasons why in a normal case you would never, ever do this. And in our system, what's supposed to happen is the prosecutor gets to put his case in only under the very controlled circumstances of a trial where the judge tells the jury from the get-go that allegations are in evidence, that the defendant's presumed innocent, that he gets to cross-examine, that he gets to put in a defense, etc. This went out with none of those admonitions, and the reason for it obviously is because the intention is to get it into the media in the run-up to the election. That's the only sensible reason for it.
Absolutely. It's dirty tricks. To me, it's really sleazy. And if Trump gets elected, Jack Smith will no longer, of course, be special. It all goes away. It all goes away.
Yeah, it's probably right. He'll have some trouble with Judge Chutkan on that, but I still think that constitutionally he can make it all go away. But, the other thing, Rita, is if Trump gets elected, one of the things I think people are going to conclude is that the Democrats were so unabashed in using the criminal justice system in a political way that turned off and frightened a lot of voters. And it might actually redound to their detriment, even though they thought this was going to be a big weapon for them.
That's a great point. Ed Cox, it could backfire is his point.
It could absolutely backfire.
Yeah, Gov Patterson.
So I'm a Democrat, and I'm not going to be voting for President Trump, but
You're not? Ed, did you hear that? I didn't know that. All right.
Well, Ed's taking me out next week. Maybe
Could
things
be.
will change.
You never know. Depends what
But
who pays the bill.
It's so. For instance, in the actual data that was released, there's a point where someone says to President Trump, and this is on January 6th, in the middle of the afternoon, that the Vice President Mike Pence may be in danger because he's still in the calendar, and Trump purportedly said, "So what?" Now, maybe they're not trying to, maybe they're trying to play it close to the vest, but once you said something like that and you put it out in the public, unless you have any supporting information about that, it's a loud accusation on the front page, but under it, it means nothing.
And in addition, Ed Cox here, I don't know if that has anything to do with immunity, which is the purpose for this whole exercise. What do you think, Andrew McCarthy?
Well, I think it does have a lot to do with immunity, but I think that as I read the Supreme Court's decision, the Supreme Court and Jack Smith are like two ships passing in the night, right? So what the Supreme Court says, what Jack Smith is saying is that because Pence and Trump were candidates for office, we should be looking at them as office seekers rather than office holders wielding executive power, and therefore you don't have to worry about executive privilege and immunity. What the Supreme Court said is that the president's powers are so vast and so important in our constitutional system that there's no bright line where you can separate when an incumbent president is acting as a candidate and when he's acting as the president. So I think that Smith's argument kind of goes right into the teeth of the Supreme Court's decision. But again, Ed, I don't think that this is meant to be a legal exercise. I think it's meant to be a political exercise to get the case and the evidence into the public domain.
Yeah, clearly. It is all motivated by politics, and it's disgraceful. I really do. I find it terrible, the lawfare and the politicization of the whole thing. Andy, thank you so much. Andy McCarthy, we love having you. Thank you.
My pleasure. Have a great night.
You too.
Janine Pirro here for Colonial Metals Group. Colonial Metals Group helps Americans protect their future with the most trusted store of wealth in human history, physical gold and silver. If you're retiring or retired, go to colonialmetalsgroup.com/Pirro for your free Janine Pirro Colonial Metals Group Retirement Protection Kit, or call 800-965-8004. 800-965-8004 now to receive a free home safe and up to $7,500 in free silver.